welcome to this live. I am Beth Miller. I am a marriage coach, and I'm so excited to bring on Stronger Marriages. They are a phenomenal power team, a couple that has been in ministry for, I think it's about 20 years, and they've been married 30 years. They've raised four wonderfully amazing little men, and they speak to thousands and thousands of couples a year. So all right, I'm just waiting for them to join me here, Trey and Lee. They'll be joining us for this incredible Q&A. What I need you to do is just request to join. Here we go. I got the request, and we show you all their lovely answers. So here we go. Hey,
Hi guys, how are y'all?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
We're good. We're trying to get our camera adjusted and everything else.
Well, while you do that, let me see. I mentioned that you guys have been in marriage ministry for a while. You have been married a long time, so you are a great couple to be giving us some advice. You've raised four boys. I'm a mom with three boys. You've authored a couple different books, and yeah, you travel around and you guys speak to many, many people too. So our people travel to see you as well. So let's get started. Did I miss anything first before we get started?
You didn't. We're glad to be here.
That's right. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
absolutely. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So we have a ton of questions. I have a list of about 12 here. So if anyone's watching, please put a question in the chat. I will try and keep an eye on the chat. I'm going to be posing all these questions. So let me know if you have questions. We'll add them to our list. But the first one is, number one, how can I get romance back into a marriage? Like, this is a huge question. So I guess it depends on what has led to the lack of romance. Was it ever there? Has it just gone away? So let's hop into that one first. What are your thoughts?
You go?
No, you go. Sorry. How do we get romance back in our marriage?
How do we get it back? So I think a lot of times it can just be the little things. Him bringing me my coffee, me, giving him a squeeze on the leg because I know his love language is touch. So I think a lot of times it can just be the little things that can help spark some romance. Keeping lines of communication open is huge. I mean, if you don't feel the romance, then maybe you just need to have a conversation about that. Dating, we're huge proponents of going on dates. Leaving the kids somewhere and finding some time for it just to be the two of you. So those are some starting points for sure.
Yeah, the only thing I can think that I would add to that I think is kind of an important thing is, besides the big conversation of going, what can we do to be more romantic, is maybe ask your spouse, what are some things that I do that you think are romantic? Because I asked that question to Lee one time, and she told me two or three things that I didn't know were actually romantic things. And so I learned some stuff about what she considers to be romance and what I consider to be romance. And the other thing that really stands out to me is our romance is built a lot on friendship as well. And when we're spending time together, we feel a whole lot more romantic and romantic for each other than when we do when we're not spending adequate time together.
I love those answers. Those are great. And I think my biggest suggestion is, number one, there's a great resource. You can go look up what your love language is. What is your love language? What is your partner's love language? Often we love our partners with our own love language. For me, I love to tell my husband lovely things about himself. I love to give him compliments, but really that's not his love language. That's mine. I love when he tells me things like, you look pretty today. He doesn't care about that. He has other love language. He loves physical touch. And that's what I need to do. I need to reach out and do that for him. So figure out what your partner's love language is. It's not always natural for us to love based on a different love language, but it's something you need to be aware of and start to implement. So we are going to have to rapid fire through these questions.
Okay.
I have a couple
more. Can I add one? Let me add one more in there that I think really needs to be said. A lot of times you kick back and you go, well, I'd like to be romantic, but my wife isn't being romantic. Or I would be more romantic if my husband would do. Somebody's got to take the initiative at some point and do some romantic things. And whether that's a text message, something to bring in some flowers, something to put out some effort. So if you're waiting on your spouse to do something that's romantic, then probably it's your turn to kick in and maybe try again.
Love this. Perfect. Yeah, keep trying. Good one. So I have another question. All right. how to get trust back after an affair. This is one of my specialties. I'll just start this one right away.
Yes,
But
please,
number
you
one,
do that.
my heart goes out to anyone that's going through this, right? Betrayal, whether it's physical, emotional, or both, is devastating. And it comes with a ton of emotions. So I think the first thing that needs to happen is, I am a big believer in, you got to work on yourself first. That's a lot of pain. You can go right to couples counseling, but I would suggest a lot of individual, just to really get to the root of that pain, because it's like you have this backpack on. The backpack of the pain, the hurt, the anger, the sadness of everything that's happened to you. And so until you can get that backpack off and really heal yourself of that pain, it's probably going to keep coming up in all your conversations. You may be throwing it back at your partner just to remind them, hey, remember, even little digs, you did this to me. I'm not forgiving you yet, or I'm not accepting that you did this. You might want to give them constant reminders of how much pain you're in. So we really got to process your pain so that you can show up as your true self, free of that pain, so that you can carry on conversations that'll be productive to really healing your marriage and healing that communication and maybe whatever got you there. So that's my quick snapshot of how to get trust back, is start working with yourself. And then after that will come proper boundaries and communication, and we can kind of go into that a little bit. But number one is yourself.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think from the other standpoint, if we can talk about it from the guilty party standpoint for just a second, you're going to have to be patient with your spouse. It is your job to validate their feelings. It is your job to not pressure them to, why are you not over this? You're the one, the guilty party's got to do a lot of work in this to help the other party heal and go through this process of just, we're going to be patient and allow them to do that.
Thank you for sharing that. All right, next question. If you have any more questions about infidelity, pop them in the chat now. Pop them in the chat and we will address those too if you have more specific ones. But the next question is, all right, I'm a husband and father of 5. I struggle with showing my wife appreciation in everything she does for us. How do I do this? I bet all wives are like, I have answers for this. I have answers. Let me tell them. But let's start with this. Father of 5 wants to show more appreciation to his wife. Not sure how. I'll let you guys take the floor on this one.
I just want to say to that father, well done in realizing you need to be showing a lot of appreciation, and you're looking for ways to do it. So well done on that.
Yeah, I think just one of the ways is to notice what she's doing, and just verbally tell her, I appreciate, I see you, I see what you're doing, and I appreciate it. The next thing that would really show her a lot of appreciation is for you to say, what can I do to help? I think, pitch right in and get right in there with her and work alongside her.
And I'll remind maybe the spouse that could use some help. If your spouse asks, what can I do to help you? Don't get frustrated with them because they don't know to just jump in and do something. Just give them a list of 2 or 3 specific things and ways that they can help. They want to help. They may just not know what you exactly need. There may be laundry on the bed that needs folded, and maybe they didn't notice it, or maybe they think he or she doesn't want me to fold that. But if they ask, what can I do to help? Give them a job and tell them thanks for helping me do that, instead of getting frustrated that they don't just know what to do.
I'm going to take it one step deeper. For that husband, I'm wondering, why is it so difficult to tell her? Is it that it's difficult to tell her, or you don't know what to say? And so I think we could do a little bit of inner work there. Have you been able to communicate your feelings in the past? Is this something that's new, something that's difficult? I think getting into the real reason as well, so that you can more naturally communicate that in your marriage. All right, next question. Ooh, okay. I think this one. Advice for a spouse wanting to stay and work on the marriage while the other spouse doesn't. What would you suggest for that?
Here we go. Well, that's a really hard situation, and it's tough when you feel like you're in a one-sided marriage. And sometimes the only thing you can do is do what you can do, which is you work on it and you continue to work on it. Sometimes you can't make your spouse pick up their oar and row their side of the boat, but you can definitely inspire them to do that by continuing to go, hey, I'm going to keep working and I'm going to keep doing the things that are going to hopefully inspire them to do that. Lee mentioned a while ago, simple things like getting up in the morning time and fixing their coffee for them, packing their lunch, just little stuff that goes, I love you, and my actions are going to show that, and I'm going to continue to work and hopefully inspire you to do the same, even when you're not currently rowing your side of the boat in this marriage.
Yeah, I primarily work with women, and one thing I always say to them too, if they find that their husband's one step out the door, is do you have one more try in you? If you have one more try in you, then you have to go for it. And to do that, really, you got to show up as your best self. So again, it's that backpack, got to take that backpack off. But often when we start to heal some of the stuff from our past, whether it's people pleasing behaviors or shutting down or our anxious attachments or avoidant attachments, when we start to heal those things, we start to feel whole, love ourselves, know that we're worthy of a relationship where we feel respected. What happens is our vibration change. All of a sudden I start showing up differently. I'm happier. I'm lighter to be around. My communication with my husband is all of a sudden maybe more joyful, lighter. It's not so heavy or nagging or just like I start to yell or start to shut down. It becomes more consistent. And when your vibration's higher because you're happier, your communication's more consistent, your partner picks up on that too. And trust starts to form because your partner starts to trust that, oh, she or he is not going to yell at me. He or she's not going to shut down. We can actually start to have healthier communication. So trust starts to build in this kind of way that you didn't realize because it's just a vibration. All of a sudden you're like the party. You walk into a party and it feels really good. You're like, this is a fun place to be. And so that from then your vibration then starts to heal your partner's vibration. And so that's a really good way of giving it one more try.
Yeah,
all right.
That's a good point.
Next question. Oh, this one's really simple. What's a simplified way to find each other's love language? Just Google 5 love languages quiz. There's tons of free quizzes out there. So if you're looking to figure out each other's love language, I would suggest just do a quick Google search and take the quiz. Text it to your wife or your husband and they can do it as well. And you can have a conversation about it. All right.
Can I add one thing in there on that? Okay,
yeah.
Our love languages change periodically. Over our 35 years of marriage, we've had ours change a little bit. So if you haven't done it in a while, we actually visited with a couple the other day that said we redid the love language test and ours weren't the same after what they were 10 years ago. So if it's been a while since you've done that love language test, it's probably a good idea to go in there and redo it again to make sure you're still where you need to be.
I think that's a great idea. It does change. You're absolutely right. And just another little like tidbit out there, kids, they have love languages too. You can take the quiz for your kids to figure out how to best love them as well. Another one, we had a cheating one in here. It sounds like how they worded it. I worked on myself, my husband worked on himself, but I still can't fully get over it. So I'm sensing that there's probably still some thoughts that keep coming up, or it's on the back of your mind. Is it going to happen again? And so one way that I suggest working on this is really keeping a journal or a dialogue of these are the thoughts that keep coming up, whether it's a quick flash of a memory. Facebook is kind of the worst for this too, because all of a sudden you see memories from like 2 years ago. You're like, that's when he was cheating or she was cheating. And that kind of like brings on the memories too. But kind of keeping track of what's triggering it, because what's triggering it is probably subconsciously still looping in your mind. It's still not completely at a place of peace or acceptance or fully forgiven. So I would just start with awareness. What is triggering you when you feel like you're not fully over it? And then we'll want to dig deeper into whatever that emotion is, that memory that's popping up, or that thought that keeps looping. And if you need some strategies, I can go deeper into that a little later in this talk. But that's my simplified way of dealing with those thoughts. Start with awareness.
Excellent point.
What is causing it?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Do you want to add to anything on that one?
I think you nailed it.
The only thing we try to remind people is this is no get over it quick thing. And some people think, hey, in 2 to 3 months or 6 months, it was last year and why am I not better? It takes a while. You can't be hurt emotionally in that way and it not require a lot of time to heal from something like that. And so be patient with yourself or be patient with your spouse as they heal from that.
Absolutely. Well said. We have a question that just popped up. Suggestions for newlyweds in their 20s to keep things smooth. I'm going to compound that with a question that also came through on stories. That was, how often should you be having sex as a newlywed? So let's kind of throw in some suggestions for newlyweds to keep things going smoothly, but also in the bedroom.
I think, I'll just real quickly, you've got to educate yourself in marriage.
Oh, good point.
So, if you're not reading a marriage book together, grab one and read one. Constantly be educating yourself on marriage and your spouse's needs. So that's huge, and communicate, about what you're reading. So that's a starting point.
That is, and that's one of the things we did really well as a young married couple. And we didn't know we were doing well. And we look back now and we go, we did really well on that. And we were reading marriage books. We were attending marriage workshops. We wish we would have had marriage podcasts back in those days. But anytime we had the chance to educate ourselves on marriage, it not only helped us, but it gave us stuff to talk about, because I'd ask her, are you really that way? Is that really what women think? And so I learned as I went as a young couple, we kind of learned each other. And then sexually, two things. Number one, be patient as a newlywed, because it will get better. And I'm not saying it's not good now, but sex, when done right in marriage, should get better all the time. It should be one of those things that as you get to know each other and you become more educated about your spouse's body, it ought to be more fun, because you know what rocks your spouse's world, and you've learned those things. And when it comes to frequency, I don't know that there's a set number on frequency. If you and your spouse are happy with twice a month or twice a day, it's whatever you're happy with. There's no guideline that anybody should be set on that goes, hey, we're in our 40s, we should be having sex this often. Whatever both of you agree on mutually should be what your frequency is. And again, if that's 10 times a year or 10 times a month, whatever you're happy with, that's what normal sex should be in your marriage.
So there's usually a higher drive and a lower drive, person in a marriage. And so the key there is to compromise, because somebody's going to want it more than the other one. That's pretty inevitable. And so compromise is the key to that.
Yeah. Meet in the middle.
Yeah.
I like that. And just to add to letting things go smoothly, something that my husband and I have been doing is, instead of reading a book, because he's not a big reader, is we'll just come with one thing. It could be a reel from Facebook that he'll send to me, just something that's cute or just informative. I'll often bring like an article, and I'll take screenshots of the sections I want him to read. He's not one that's going to listen to a full hour podcast or read a book. So it's these little snapshots. Like, we have 3 kids that are under the age of 12, so we're quite busy. So for us to do that is great, even if it's just 10 minutes of being like, this is what I learned. I'd love to share this with you. What are your thoughts? Yeah. I'd like you to do this. What are your thoughts? And I think from that article, I could also do this. And that just gives us something to talk about. And you could do that with just lighthearted articles too. You could do it with news stories. It doesn't have to be like, because so many couples just don't know what to talk about. So if you just bring both of you bring a piece of media, and you can just talk about that. It seems planned, but at the same time, it works really well to connect you.
That's excellent.
That's a great point. People tag spouses and partners tag each other in posts all the time. And that is so healthy, because Lee will ask me sometimes, what'd you tag me in this for? Or that was a great point, or she'll tag me in stuff or send me stuff. And so that is a great way to grow in your marriage through simple social media stuff.
I agree. And you know what? I like it because I get a little text message every once in a while that has like a reel. Oh, he's thinking of me. And that's words of affirmation, which I like. It's just a text message. So it meets my love language. Plus it's education, which I love. Plus we get to talk about it and connect later. So it's a huge win-win for my love language. All right. And just really quickly to piggyback on that, there was someone who posted, how do you keep things, like, I guess recommendations for newlyweds, but older newlyweds. I think she said, or he said 66 and 70. Any suggestions? We talked about the newly young ones, but what about older ones? Is it the same advice or is it different?
Yeah, I think the same rules apply. It's communication of, whether you're in your 60s or in your 20s, it is what do you like? What are you comfortable with? How often frequency should take place. And then, of course, anytime when you're an older newlywed, when you're talking 60s or 70s, you're going to have to work around, does my body still work the same way that it used to? Do I make as much testosterone as I used to? It's whatever it is. And so those are just communication things that if you can learn, the couples that have the best sex lives are the couples that aren't afraid to talk about their sex life. And so when you're not afraid to say this works and this doesn't work, and to talk about those things, it really blesses your relationship.
Amazing. All right, I'm going to put 2 questions together for this one. One is, what is the key to a happy marriage? And I'm going to combine that with the best and worst marriage advice you've ever heard. So key to a happy marriage, best and worst marriage advice.
Well, there's a lot of keys. I don't know that there's one key to a happy marriage. Friendship is one of those things that it's really hard to have a happy marriage if you're not friends with your spouse, and you can't be friends with your spouse if you never spend time with your spouse. There's got to be that time of doing fun things, doing things outside the home. And if you've got littles, that may require at-home dates and things like that. But it's really, really hard to feel connected to your spouse if you're never spending time with them, and you don't feel like your friendship with them is, I mean, generally that's why you fall in love in the first place, is because you've spent so much time together dating that you just go, I can't do life without this person. And then sometimes we get married and we start working two different places, and the next thing you know, it's like, I don't have the same feelings I did back as newlyweds or pre-marriage. And it's not the love that has kind of wavered, it's the friendship, and you just need to work on that friendship.
As far as the bad advice, do you want me to jump right into that, or okay?
I know where she's going on this one. We don't like this one at all.
Because we talked, and I think we talked about it just recently. You know, a lot of people will say, don't ever go to bed angry, and we disagree with that. We really do, because sometimes you just can talk something to death when you just need to let it go, sleep on it, and you may wake up and it's like, that was no big deal. You know, everything is new in the morning, and you just realize that just wasn't as big of a deal as what we were making it. So you don't have to figure everything out before you can go to sleep at night.
Yeah, if that happened, we probably would still have been up for the last couple of years. So it's okay to go to bed and not have it all figured out. And in the Christian world, sometimes we take a Bible verse a little out of context that talks about don't let the sun go down on your anger. And it's really not talking about, in a marriage, surrounding and standpoint of you can't go to bed frustrated at your spouse.
Okay, my best advice, it isn't even necessarily marriage related, but it's you own your own emotions. Emotions, they're energy and motion. And so whatever energy is running through you, whether it's happiness or whether it's anger, sadness, jealousy, it's yours. Your partner didn't cause it. It's within you. It's actually a neurotransmitter. It's hormones that are actually flooding your body. That's why we feel flooded by an emotion. A thought such as, that's unfair, can actually release like cortisol in your body. Like that's the emotion. It feels like anger, or it feels like stress. And so you own your emotions. Your partner doesn't cause them. That'd be some of my best advice. Worst advice is when it comes to arguments. You shouldn't argue, or couples do argue. That's just natural. I think what it comes down to is it's about the repair. It's how the argument ends. Does it have a repair that comes at the end? And whether it's at the end, we're talking a day, or does it come like an hour? But I think before the repair, what needs to be communicated, whoever's stepping away, is I need 1 hour. I need to figure out my responsibility in this, and I'm feeling triggered. And so you're stepping away, but you're also letting possibly an anxious spouse know, I will be back to repair this, but I need to step away so we can have a repair. So that would be my kind of my best, worst kind of melded together.
That is a great point.
All right, next one. It's about codependency between a spouse and a sibling. And I don't know if they meant sibling like a child, but maybe let's just go with codependency when one spouse is codependent, maybe even to a mom, a dad, maybe a child, or maybe one of their own siblings. What are your thoughts? Codependency.
That's a hard one for us. It's not something we work in a whole lot. But our reminder to couples is when you're married, that's your new family, and they come first. My spouse comes first before my family, my children, my parents, my job, everything else. And if I am codependent upon a parent, upon a child, upon a work or a hobby, then I'm not helping my marriage in any form or fashion. And if my spouse is telling me, hey, I'm feeling threatened by, and I'm in a healthy marriage, then I'm going to have to listen and go, whether that feeling is valid or not, she feels it's valid or he feels it's valid. And so I need to at least take a serious look at what they're telling me.
Yeah, and I think you can't heal somebody else. You can't control someone else. We all know that, but you actually can't. So we have to step back from it. So you can communicate your needs. But I think you got to figure out what your needs are. If you're sensing that they're codependent to, I think she said her sibling, so it must be a sister or a brother. If you're sensing that, what's it making you feel like? Is it making you feel abandoned? Is it making you feel left out? Is it making you feel like you're not a priority? So we got to figure out what the belief is behind it. And then from there, figure out, is it a limiting belief? Is it something I felt in my past? Have I always felt not significant or always not important in this relationship or other relationships? So again, maybe there's some work to do on yourself. Our relationship pain is the biggest invitation. It sounds like it's something good. Biggest invitation for work within ourselves. We are constantly growing because of our partner. Our partners are our greatest teachers. So I think starting to explore, what is this making me feel like, this relationship? And then can I talk to them about how I feel? Talk to them, but then it's about their response. And that's when we kind of take it from there. Like, you want to have obviously good communication when you're trying to communicate that you need more time or whatever it is you need from them. So getting clear on what your needs are, without going on and on. So I'll move on to the next one.
Excellent.
Yeah. Next one. Oh, there was one right here. Just let me pull it up. It was, we're talking substance abuse. How to deal with a spouse with a substance abuse. And we talked about this before in our lives. So you know what? I know, Trey, I'm going to let you take that one for now.
Definitely. Anytime it deals with substance abuse, you've got to have outside help, and you've got to reach out to someone in your area, a counselor, an AA group, somebody that can advise you, somebody that's been there. While you may reach out to a friend, a mentor, a pastor, if they've not ever been in that situation, that's going to be really hard for them to probably go, here's exactly what you need to do. Find someone who's got the experience to go, hey, I work with this, I'm in this. Be willing to get to help, because substance abuse is one of those things that it's a relationship just killer if it can't be fixed. And there is lots of help out there. And that may mean even willing to even acknowledge it at this time, you seek help and work on your end to look for advice on what you can do from somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. So I think just to add to that, you got to look after yourself first. Are you safe? And then the next part is, are you at a place where, you know what, I can hold space for my partner while they go get help. I'm okay with this. I know we're going through a really tough time, because I don't want you to go on the roller coaster with them. Because with addictions, there's highs, there's lows, there's highs, there's expectations, and expectations crash, and there's hope, and then that can crash. So making sure that you're not on that roller coaster. So looking at any attachments you have to their healing, expectations you're placing on them to get better. So I think really making sure that your attachments to them and their outcome are in a very healthy, being placed in a healthy way. I'm having trouble with those words there, but yeah, making sure you don't go on the roller coaster with them, making sure you're safe. And then if it comes to a time, like, I'm all pro marriage, but if it comes to a point where you're like, I can't do this anymore, giving yourself that permission to look at a potential separation or exiting the marriage, because you can only be in that toxic environment for so long. So that would be my advice when it comes to addictions.
Yes.
Next one, money and fights. Let's talk about money and fights. How do you talk about money without getting into a fight? Finances.
Finances are divorce. One of the top 5 reasons for divorce is money issues in marriage, and it's a tough thing, and we talk about it often. And we're, all we can say, we've got 2 or 3 pieces of advice. One, Lee would tell you from a standpoint of the lady who pays the bills in the house, that marriage is a lot more fun and a lot less stressful when there's not a lot of debt hanging over your head. And you may be in a position where you're going, well, I'm already there. Well, figure out what you've got to do to get some help on that, whether it's Dave Ramsey, somebody that can help you figure out how to fix that. Our big advice is always to try to live within your means. That's a main thing. It's because when you go, hey, we can afford a $20,000 car, and you start looking at $30,000 cars, before you know it, you're going to be in trouble, and that hurts every part of your marriage when you're having some financial issues. Tell me what you think.
And I think, how to avoid fighting about it. You might need to, set aside a time when you can talk, when you're not tired, when you're not, find a good time where you can sit down and talk about it. You might even need to find a mediator to sit down with you in the same room with you. And because sometimes that just helps keep you on track, that helps keep you calm, whatever it is. But there are people that specialize in that and could probably help you set budgets and whatever. So if that's what it takes to keep you from fighting about it, then by all means, sit down with a financial advisor, some kind of mediator, and talk about it together with somebody else present.
Yeah, that's, again, goes back to the thing of seek help. There are people out there, there are books out there, there are podcasts out there that can help with those things. Don't be afraid to seek help when it comes to financial assistance or financial advice on how do I fix this.
I had some great advice once with a financial expert that I brought on for an Instagram Live, and his was, bring up marriage or bring up money within your marriage from a place of like dreaming. Like this is something that we aspire for in our marriage. We want to have this house. We'd love to go on this vacation for our 20th anniversary. Like talk about the things that you want to have and then work it backwards, being like, how are we going to get there? But have some fun with the conversation. Keep it light. Like, sure, this is our bleak reality, but how can we like slowly dig ourselves out? So trying to keep it optimistic, trying to keep it like fun and light, even though it can be really stressful, but adding that stress is not going to help solve the problem. The other thing is that when, you know, on me, I'm always talking about individual work. Money wounds and love are very deeply connected. If you're often not feeling like you're enough in your marriage, you may not feel like you have enough money. Scarcity is quite, like I don't have enough is quite common, and also feeling like low self-worth. So there's a lot of connections between your money wounds and also your love for yourself. So just kind of keeping an eye on those two when you heal a lot of your money wounds. If you're feeling like you don't have enough, or money goes as fast as it comes in, or you have to save because you're never going to have enough. Like if we start looking at some of those dialogues within your money story, it also can tie closely to your love story. All right, next one is, okay, our communication is not very good. Our communication is not very good. He shuts down when I try to talk about important things. Okay, so talking about important things, I'm guessing that could be money, it could be kids, it could be your future. How do we get a husband not to shut down and open up?
I'm not going to talk on this. I'm shutting down right here. I'm just kidding.
You could probably shed some good light. My mind goes to, you know, maybe you need to approach him and say, at some time when you're ready, I would like to discuss whatever it is. And then let them, you know, say, okay, give them time to think about it, to process it, and then agree on a time when you can come together and talk about it, so that maybe you're not just blindsiding him with it and expecting him to talk right then and there.
Yeah, set an appointment. If you tell most men or some men, hey, let me know when you're ready to talk, it isn't going to happen. And so one of the things you can do is, hey, pick a time this week when we can sit down and talk about some things that are going on that we need to cover. And then make an appointment like, hey, nothing's going on Thursday night. Let's just get the kids to bed, let's say Thursday night at 8:30, and we're not going to turn on the television. We're going to sit down and we're going to visit about 2 or 3 things that we need to kind of work through. And when you can do it that way versus just bringing it up, or you know, an hour from now, hey, in a little while, do you have time to talk? And you can tell your spouse, here's 2 or 3 things I want to cover, but can we do it Thursday night at 8:30 and talk about that? If you can actually set a time and almost like you have an appointment, it will help him to be willing to talk a little bit more on it.
And another thing, we heard this, it was some people that were talking about parents talking to teens about something uncomfortable, and they suggested, you know, sometimes after dark, if you take your teen to get a Coke in the car, you know, it just kind of, it takes some pressure off of them, because they don't really have to like make a lot of eye contact, but yet they can't go anywhere. They're in the car with you. But you can, you know, you could kind of make it fun. Let's have a Coke date. It's not super intense or stressful, because you don't have to have, you know, feel like you have to make lots of eye contact or whatever it is. So I don't know, that could help keep some of that shutting down from happening.
If you're going on a road trip for a couple hours and you got them in there, that's a great time to talk.
Yeah, another way, I've given some kind of quirky suggestions too for husbands or wives that won't open up, is you can actually have the conversation back to back, because it takes out body language, so you're not distracted by body language and you're just hearing tone and words. But another strategy I really like, it's from Marriage Helper, and they have something called SMART Contact. And the S stands for like stop pushing behaviors. So what we want to do is kind of look at your communication as a whole. Like, how often are you actually trying to push these conversations on your partner? So we want to manage that. Like you said, make an appointment. So we want to make sure we're also, like, if you want to do like the 20, what's the Gottman? Gottman 1 to 5, but they have like, for every one conversation that's super serious, you need to have 4 that are not. So having a look at your overall conversations, like the pushing behaviors, M is like manage business items, like just really taking a close eye, an evaluation of how your communication is generally in terms of topics. So watch out for the pushing behaviors. How often are you actually demanding these intense conversations? How often are you talking about business, like boring items? Instead, start to make things a little bit lighter, having those fun conversations.
And there are times not to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Date night, to us, date night is not a time to have serious conversation or heavy conversation. It is a time to go have some fun. You finally got the kids, you know, with a sitter or with your parents. go have some fun without having the heavy conversation. The other time, we personally feel like bedtime, once you climb in together with your bed with your spouse, is probably not the time to have really heavy talk. That is a time to reconnect, to cuddle in bed, to visit, to talk about what you got on your schedule coming up and things along those lines. So there are times to talk about heavy stuff, but there's also times where, let's go have fun tonight. We're going to have a date night, and let's just go have a good time and not talk about issues or whatever it is.
I like that. So next question is, my husband and I have opposing work schedules. He hates to plan. So how do we find time for us? I would start this conversation with curiosity. I love using curiosity as a way to get answers from your partner, just to figure out where they're at. So a simple question that can't be answered with yes and no. It needs to be open-ended. So it's, what do you think would be a good way for us to connect? Or when would you like us to connect next? Like, very open-ended questions to figure out where they're at. And I think that's a really good jumping off point. If their answer is, I don't know, we'll just make it happen, that's when you can articulate, I think that's great, that it'd be amazing if we could just make it happen. But I'd love to know if we could, like, if we just go and make it happen, I can see how it hasn't worked in the past. Can we try something different this time? And that can be where they're at.
I think you nailed it. I think that's a perfect answer.
Yeah. All right. Next one we have, I don't know what your thoughts are on this one. We already talked about sex, but this one is, my wife doesn't make sex a priority. So when it comes time for it. So I know some wives, what happens is you're tired at the end of the day. You just don't want to, it may seem like a good idea, but you just physically aren't there anymore. So my wife doesn't make sex a priority at times when it's needed. Why?
Generally, and it's not always that case in every marriage, but generally most men in most marriages, not all marriages, have the higher sex drive than a wife does. And sometimes husbands are really poor at communicating, and that's not always the case, but communicating, hey, tonight, is this a good night, or tomorrow night, and maybe kind of setting an idea in his wife's head of, okay, tomorrow night it is. It's almost like we talk about scheduling sex sometimes, not saying let's get our calendar out and put it down for Tuesday at 7, but we often schedule sex by going, hey, it's been a little while. Is tomorrow night, we're home, it's a good night, and it's on the schedule. And so you need to make sure your wife knows that you're thinking about it. One of the most frustrating things in the world as a husband or a wife who thinks maybe this is the night is to not communicate that, and your spouse not realize it, and you have this unmet expectation. And so you have to communicate that. And I know that maybe there is a husband out there that has said, how about tonight or tomorrow night? And the spouse keeps coming up with one excuse after another. And you're going to have to get to the root of why that is. But we feel sex is a very important part of our marriage and most marriages, because that's how husbands and wives connect in one of many ways. And for many people or many spouses, that is one of the main ways they connect. And we've realized later in our marriage that sex in our marriage was a much bigger deal than probably what we gave it credit for. That when we were doing a good job meeting one another's needs, our marriage, we felt closer together than what we did when we were just like, yeah, we'll get to it one of these days. And so, if the lower drive spouse out there is hearing this and they're going, is it really all that big a deal? It really is probably a pretty big deal to your spouse. And if you'll make it a bigger deal, it will bless your marriage. Not just your husband, but your marriage completely.
Yeah, well said. Anything else you want to add to that? I'm good.
I think he covered it pretty well.
Amazing. So next one. Wait, I tried a new thing. Yeah, it pops up at the bottom. Okay, advice. How do you handle a spouse who constantly tells you they're with you for the kids? All right, this is a tricky one. So yeah, it hurts big time. That can hurt. So I think if that is the reason, are you okay with that? If you're not okay with that, I think maybe opening up a conversation around why did we get married? What did you love about me? What is it that first drew you to me? And then are those things still there? Are they still there? Or do you feel like some of them aren't there anymore? What would you like to see me do? How am I not maybe fulfilling your needs? What are your needs? And then you can also share your needs for them too. So I think just starting on some reflection of what led you to first be in love and where you're at now and how you got there, and kind of seeing if you can overcome some of those roadblocks.
Yeah, you said it best, and that's really good. And I would love to just speak to the other spouse for a second that maybe says, I really feel like I'm just in this marriage for the kids. Can I just tell that spouse that instead of looking at your marriage that way, the best way to look at your marriage is, why don't I work on building a good marriage for my kids? Because my kids need to see a healthy marriage, and they need to see how marriage is done. And if I'm just kind of in this for the kids, they're not, you're not doing them any favors by showing them a bad marriage. So maybe you're the one that kind of needs to pick up and go, all right, I'm going to go all in because I do love my children, and I'm going to do what I can to make my marriage better.
Yeah, excellent. Lee, do you have anything to add?
That's good.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to quit talking and let
you.
Next one, maybe we'll let Lee start with this one. Which relationship books would you recommend?
Well, we've talked about the 5 love languages. That's one of our very favorites by Dr. Gary Chapman.
Yep.
Yes, Gary Chapman, 5 love languages. I think every married couple needs to read that for sure. We've talked about a lot of sexual intimacy during this time together. And so another book that we highly recommend is Sheet Music by Dr. Kevin Lehman. That's an excellent book. Of course, we have a couple of 3 books that we think are pretty good that you can find on our webpage as well.
Let me throw this out about marriage books or relationship books. There's no such thing as a relationship book that you're going to agree with 100%. And it's kind of like eating fish. Pick out the meat, and if you come across something that you go, don't know if I agree with that, it's okay. Throw the bones out and go, I'm just going to keep looking for the stuff that works. And so we've kind of become such a cancel culture that there's a lot of people out there going, I don't agree with this paragraph in this marriage book here, and so it needs to be thrown out. And it's like, but there's really a lot of good stuff in that marriage book. And so I guess my point is, you really can't go wrong on a good marriage book. We have read dozens and dozens of marriage books. Some we've liked better than others. We have friends who, the ones we're not real crazy about, that will tell us, hey, that one was our favorite. So every marriage book is a little bit different to somebody else. And the main thing is just find you one and read it with your spouse, and maybe, read a chapter and hand it to your spouse and go, let me know when you're done, and let's talk about chapter 1 and then move on to chapter 2. That's something else we did as a young couple that really blessed us that we look back on, is somebody at one of the marriage retreats had encouraged us to read a book or 2 a year together, a marriage book. And we have read lots of marriage books together, and that really blessed us. Now that we look back on that, because it helped us I would look at stuff and go, why did you underline this? And she would explain stuff to me, and I'd go, I had never thought about that from a wife's standpoint. And so marriage books they're just so good for marriage. And so find you one and read it.
I love how you highlighted it for him, and then he could see what you thought were the key points. That just added a whole other element.
Some
It was
for
a
her
book
too,
that has
but-
Back and forth.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
But yeah,
I love
there were a
that.
lot of things I'd ask her. I go, I don't understand why you highlighted this. Why is this a big deal? And she explained to me, and I go, oh, I get that. I understand now. And so it was just great learning experience for us to go through and read a book together.
Amazing. All right. I tapped on this question a little too early, but here it is. Social media has damaged my marriage. How can I avoid having social media get involved in my marriage? Ooh, boundaries. This screams boundaries to me.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, social media can be so hard on your marriage. Whether it's ex relationships that you have, or spending too much time on social media. I mean, there's so many facets of this, and I'm not exactly sure, what it is about social media that has damaged their marriage. But, we've got to limit our time on social media. Period. Just limit your time. Everybody needs to.
Yeah, and those boundaries that you talked about, you've got to have boundaries, both husband and wife. And we have boundaries. We have rules that we abide by on social media. We love social media. We think it's great. It has blessed our marriage, but we also know that there are some boundaries that we don't cross those lines. And so be real cautious that you figure out what those boundaries are within your marriage we don't follow certain people, or we don't have messages, secret chats going on with other folks that our spouse doesn't know about. And so there are some boundaries that you need to follow on social media. And if that person that asked that question wants to reach out to us, we've done a couple of podcast episodes on this, on social media boundaries. And you may have some as well that we think are excellent boundaries on this is a don't cross this line, and then mainly it's communicate with your spouse. But we've done some work on this that we think is really good work.
Yeah. So just to add to that too, it could be, I'm not sure what damaged it either, but whether it's you're scrolling too much in the evening and you're not connecting, or whether they actually connected with someone else outside your marriage. I think just to kind of couple that question with this one, should couples share their phones so that their other partner can see the messages or DMs? This one is interesting. I'm always about intent. What is the intent for what you're saying? The action is the intent that you don't trust them, and so you want to double check, or is it just a safety thing? If something were to happen, I have the passcode to the phone. I don't think we should ever really be checking up on our spouse and snooping, if that's what the word we want to use, or investigating, unless you feel like you can't trust them. And if you can't trust them, I think there's a conversation that needs to be had first before you start looking at phones. I know so many wives, it's sad, but like they've caught their husband texting other women because the iPhone was left, not iPhone, sorry, the iWatch, like the Apple Watch was left on their bedside table, and they don't have access to the phone, but somehow they could see it on the Apple Watch. And I feel like there's sometimes divine timing that you get the information you need when you need it, and you don't have to go looking for it. Because when you look for something, it takes you to a heightened state of like possibly anxiety, like what am I going to find? Like you're already in it as if you found it. But you don't need to put yourself in that situation to feel those feels unless it's actually going to happen. So I just be cautious of why, the intent behind why you want to look at the messages and DMs, and do you really trust your partner? And if you don't trust them, then looking at maybe past times in your life where you haven't been able to trust people, or if there's actually reasons with your current partner and why you can't trust them.
Well, we personally, our rules personally, I trust Lee, I believe she trusts me, but personally in our marriage, one of the things that's worked really well for us is we share passwords. We have a note on my phone and a note on her phone, and they share together, and all of my social media passwords are on there. And it's more of an accountability thing than anything, of just knowing if Lee ever wanted to look there, get on, that I don't care. I have no issue with that. She knows the passcode to my phone. Sometimes if my phone is closer, I'll tell her, hey, grab my phone and use it if you want to. So we personally feel in our marriage, what has worked for us is that we don't have any kind of we're open with one another's phones. We don't. I've never looked through her phone. Don't feel the need to look through her phone. But if I wanted to, she would go, here, take my phone and use it for whatever you need to. So I think that's good, because it helps us to be accountable. It helps us to show I'm not hiding anything, and we both feel a lot of trust there.
Yeah, I agree. We're the same. I think it's really important to have it, but why are you using it? And if you're just using it because this is stuff we share, perfectly fine. You want it to feel easy. You don't want your nervous system to be like heightened and like anxiety ridden with the thought of checking someone else's device, your partner's device. Okay, I'm going to move on to a question that came from your feed. It was, how often do you pray together, and why? Yeah, so how often do you pray together, and why do you always talk about praying together as being important? So let's talk about prayer and marriage.
Well, I'll start, and I'm gonna let her take over. We're big on this. A lot of people don't understand it. A lot of folks, when we mention maybe on a list of 10 things that are healthy for your marriage, a lot of people go, why is that on there? And we have found that for us, it is a very, very good thing to bring us together in closeness. It connects us together on a spiritual intimacy. And then the other thing that really, really blew us away are the statistics, not done by Christian people, but done by just people out there, on couples who pray together. And those statistics there's 2 or 3 of them out there.
Yeah, the Gallup study that I ran across was couples who pray together every day. Less than 1% of those couples end up in divorce. So I mean, that's huge.
You can't ignore something like that. Obviously, I mean, if Gallup put out a study that said couples who jump rope together every day, the divorce rate drops to 5, I'm like, we got to start jump roping, And so you can't ignore that statistic and just kind of go, well, hey, that's just them and they like that. Anytime somebody's done a study and it goes, the divorce rate drops to that, then something's going on there, and you at least got to look at that. And so we haven't always been comfortable praying together. It's something we didn't do well early in marriage, but now, not every night, but close to it. We do every day, but nearly every night when we climb into bed, we'll take a second and just ask God to bless our day and bless our marriage and thank Him for one another. Just as simple as that. And we have found that it has been a really big blessing for us.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think one extra element to it is when you find God, you find yourself. Like there's a big connection between knowing who you are on the inside and feeling God. Like there's a big connection between the two. So I think that's really important too, because it's spiritual, but you're also very like intimate with yourself in that moment too, being very vulnerable and open, especially if you can't be vulnerable and open with like other aspects of your life. To be able to do that with yourself and pray, you feel it, but then to do it with your partner, you're almost opening up your heart to them too.
Yeah, I've got to hear things from Lee and see areas of her heart when we pray together or when she prays that generally only God gets to see. And so it's very intimate. I mean, there is some deep intimacy in praying together because you get to see a part of a person that generally you don't get to see.
Yeah, here's a comment here. I'd love to pray with my husband in the mornings before work, but for some reason it's hard for me to go up to him and just grab his hand and pray with him for some reason. So any suggestions there on how to engage?
Just do it. Just do it. You know, I love it. You know, every now and then Lee will do that for me and she'll just go, hey, you're leaving. Let me ask God to bless our day before you leave. And I love it every time she does it. Not one time have I ever thought to myself, I wish she wouldn't do this or I don't have time for this. All I can say is I promise you, if you'll just tell your husband, can I ask God to bless our day before you leave, or bless your day, he is not going to be upset about that. So don't be afraid to do it, and you'll find it's easier the more times you do it.
That's what I was going to say. The more often you do it, the more natural it will feel. So.
Yeah, how about this one too? A lot of couples, like, especially when husbands, like I work a lot with betrayed wives. And so if the husband's cheated, they often start to lose their connection with God. They stop going to church. And the wife ends up going by themselves and their husband just won't join them anymore. Sometimes won't even pray with them anymore. And so I'd love your take on this to see how do you get your husband to come back to church with you?
That's a tough one because you can't nag about it, you know. So I think you just have to relay the importance of it, you know, that it's important to you, that you would like for him to join you. And you just keep leading by example. But definitely, I mean, sometimes when you nag, it has the opposite effect. So I don't know. What do you?
If he's not going with you, you go. And when you come, you get home, you talk about how good it was and what the lesson was about and something you learned so that he can kind of go, oh man, I kind of wish I would have went. I missed out on that. And so when your spouse can hear you talk about what they missed out on and you give that from a positive light, it will make it easier for them at some point to go, okay, I'm going to go with you.
Fantastic. I like that one a lot. Talk about what you learned because there's always such beautiful lessons. There's always something that you can take back and like, oh, that spoke to me, right? So it's amazing how the message just hits you right. And going home and sharing that. All right, I think we're getting close to our hour. There's one here that I thought I would add that came from your feed. And we've been talking about marriage, like saving, fixing, helping strategies. But this one is, how do I move on from a broken heart once my marriage has ended? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he said time. That's really the only thing that time heals all wounds. That sounds very cliche, but I think you've got to find you a good support system for sure. You know, family and friends, lean on them, lean on God. And it, you know, it may seem like it's never going to feel better in the moment, but it will. It will.
There's another chapter for your life out there somewhere, and you've got to wait for it to be written, and you've got to be patient. And I just try to remind people sometimes, love when you're ready, not when you're lonely. And you don't, because I'm hurt or because I feel like there's something void in my life, I'm not going to go seek something that I wouldn't seek just because I feel this way. So I can't remember who said that. That is a quote by Satchel Paige, I think. A baseball player once said, "Love when you're ready, not when you're lonely." And I thought that is just so good.
Is powerful. That's a good one. I think also as you exit a marriage and as a marriage kind of has been dissolved, there's natural emotions such as grief. Like there's definitely going to be that shock, the denial, the sadness, the disbelief, and then falling into anger. I think within those feelings, it's how long do they last? Do you get stuck in them? And there's no right or wrong answer in terms of how long you stay, but it's how does it impact your day? Is it ruining your day? Is it just a thought that kind of comes in and out? So just having a lot of awareness, again, awareness of your feelings. Also, if there's other emotions creeping in that aren't just the grief and the sadness of like this ending, but are more like the jealousy, regret, or embarrassment or shame. Like if there's other things that are coming in, we got to address those because those are within you. They need some love and attention. I always describe it as we have like two of us inside. One is the like little hurt, wounded us. That's like, hey, listen to me. I'm so sad. I'm so hurt. I'm so embarrassed. It's almost like we have to pick that little you up and rock them like they're a baby and just love yourself. Like it's okay to feel this way, giving yourself that grace, giving yourself the forgiveness to feel that way, and maybe digging into it a little bit more. Like, why is it that you feel embarrassed that your marriage dissolved? Is it that you had to believe that marriage just lasts forever? Is it that maybe your partner betrayed you and now you're like, I can't believe maybe I'm less of a person because I got myself in this marriage? So I think it's really good time to like look in the mirror and figure out what are the beliefs that are coming up from this end of this marriage.
That's a really, really good point.
All right. So we're pretty much at the hour. Is there anything else that you'd like to add at this point?
We had fun, and we always enjoy doing this, and we're always honored that we get to hang out with you for an hour. And thank you for what you do to bless people, and especially those folks who've been betrayed that you work with and need all the love in the world.
Yeah, and it goes right back at you. You guys are doing amazing work. Thank you for everything you do. How can anyone that's from my side start following you or access you and your resources? What would you suggest?
TreyandLea.com. Find us, click the link in our bio here on Instagram. It'll take you to everything we do, our books, our workshops, our podcast. And so any of those. And for our followers, where can they find you?
All right, so I'm at Soulify Wellness. So I'm Beth Miller. I'm a marriage coach. I specifically help women, but I do have a lot of couples and men that are part of my programs as well. So you can hop over to my bio as well. There's a ton of free resources. One that's the most popular, which is 3 Ways to Save a Marriage, and you can go to www.freemarriageguide.com and you can download that.
Love that.
So wonderful.
Very good.
Excellent. Well, shall we do this again in a couple months? We seem to get together every 3-4 months. Shall we do it again?
Yeah, let's do it again. We'll get it planned, all right?
Perfect. Awesome. So I'm going to say bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to put the replay up. So it should be on my profile as well as I think Stronger Marriages will put it up on their end too.
Absolutely.
All right. Bye.
Thank y'all, and y'all have a blessed day.
Sounds good.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.